generation away from extinction. Reagan.
And now your host, Brock Lawley.
How's everything going, man? Well, the news is depressing me and angering me, and madness at the White House, to a lower amount of respect for the man to get up in front of the Christians and insult their religion, like he did.
I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, I was really thinking about huge diatribe on the pod about this, and I was so angry that I decided not to do it because it was like, you know, I just needed to let this settle and think about it. But
did you record it?
Unbelievable. When it really comes down to it, we already know that this is the way the guy feels, and we already know that this is his worldview. But what really bothers me about this guy is we had a pilot burnt alive in front of the world, essentially. You almost never see the guy come off a teleprompter. You almost never see the guy speaking candidly. And when he does, the only thing he can find passion about is this like disdain for Christians and Americans and anything he can trace back to some sort of Western scar. And if he only had like a small percentage of that anger or righteous indignation at our actual enemies. And imagine in the Cold War, imagine having a president who had a soft spot for the communists. Imagine having a president who had like a soft spot for Gorbachev or the evils that communism proved. I mean, that's what we have in this president. We have a president who BFFs Islam. I just can't believe what I'm seeing.
You're right, and I'm also really, really pissed off about all these people that are denying that it's Islam.
The Islam isn't even denying that it's Islam. You got several countries now that are declaring this stuff radical Islam, and I mean, how is it that Muslims in the Middle East call it radical Islam, but our president doesn't?
The first I in ISIS stands for Islamic.
It's remarkable. I'm outright bewildered. The guy is so out to lunch. It's not a joke, though. I mean, it's not a joke as these maniacs march across the globe, raping, pillaging, now burning people alive. You know, it's almost as if these guys get in a room and think, okay, well, the beheading thing, you know, that's old news. That's yesterday. Let's up the ante, man. What can we do? Let's get some ideas. Anybody sadistic in here? Oh, you know, we could dismember them. Oh, not extreme enough. Not extreme enough. We gotta get a great video out there. Let's pour gas on him and burn him alive. I mean, this is insane to me. If this isn't evil, I'd love to have a coffee or a beer with this dude and just say, I'd say to him, okay, look me in the eyes. But you have some sort of political strategy here. Is it one of these situations? You know, my inclinations, my political antenna are telling me, if this guy starts talking hawkish at all, like in other words, if he starts saying, hey, we got a real enemy here, we got to throw everything but the kitchen sink at it, we get full steam ahead, he and the Democrats think that's going to lean towards Republican power because people just instinctively know that the Democrats are doves. And maybe if it's something like that, maybe that's why he's doing it. I want to know if this guy's actually that delusional or not. Because if it's politics, I almost prefer it to be politics.
Did you hear what was happening to children? They were like, the UN watchdog group just reported on Monday, they were like hanging children, burying them alive. And stuff.
What do you think about this, man? It's like demons. I mean, human beings don't do this.
It's human evil. It's human. It's evil in flesh form. And I'm tired of seeing people ignore it, deny it. It's maddening.
I'm really interested. Do these people not think this is going to wash up on their shores? Do they not think this kind? So this evil, like I always get a kick out of watching these state officials try to say that, oh, if we do this or that or this, we're going to get this contained. Do they think this is just going to lose momentum or something? Like these megalomaniacs, psychopaths, like snuff film human beings are just going to be like, okay, we had enough. We're done.
I think
we're done. Let's go back to reading comic books.
I think the narcissism level is so high with him. It's like why he won't recognize Ukraine to be in civil war. It looks bad on his campaign. It looks bad on his, resume. It's so maddening.
The Coptic Christians in the Middle East that are being totally slaughtered. Did you hear recently they're going to allow some of these Christians in the Middle East to pick up arms and fight ISIS? Before this, they wouldn't let them do it. Something to do with Islam and Christians not being allowed to do this or that. But apparently it's getting so bad over there that they're actually going to let some of these Christians pick up arms and fight ISIS right alongside the Muslims. I got to thinking about our conversation, some of our friends about Christianity and war and what they would say, pacifist side of the faith would say about that. Like there are these Christians that are obviously being slaughtered. I mean, straight up slaughtered. Everybody killed. the Coptic Christians were in that news. Remember when that Yehudi, or I can't remember what that group was that they had like cornered on those mountains, and they were, well, the thing that news didn't tell you is that was just a small percentage. The vast majority of the people that were killed were Coptic Christians. Now they're going to arm them and allow them to fight back.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, I think they should.
Oh yeah, they definitely.
If someone's coming to your house with a gun, you owe it to your family to have your own gun.
Definitely, but I mean, there's an interesting debate to be had there. So it's just interesting to see these things play out in the news. I'm just kind of curious as to what the response would be from a more passive.
Passiveness does not apply here. You cannot be passive. No,
I don't think so. I mean, but there are people that would argue differently. To deny that Ukraine is in the throes of a civil war is so intellectually dishonest. To be criminal almost.
None of her, criminal. It's actual civil war. I mean, happening. We're months and months into it already, but it's just ignored by the White House. Ignored.
They got John Kerry out there saying something, but it's all just pomp and flair, showmanship. They're not willing to do anything. Obviously, you got Putin feeling the pinch on this petroleum gas price thing. I don't think he's the kind of guy, if you put him in a corner, that he's going to lay down. I think he's going to swing. So I think what you see is even more aggression is what I would predict. The Kremlin is as the past as any indicator. And he also knows there's not going to be any fallout or ramification for it. So that's really frightening. How about this Jordanian king that puts on like a uniform and says, hey, I'm going into this fray? I mean, how different a leader is that than the one we got?
Yeah, picture B.O. on a bicycle with his little helmet, compared to that guy.
Such bad shape. You can laugh or cry, man. You can either laugh or you can cry, and I'm going to choose the former.
They're fascinating times. They're horrific times. Back on this man's tenure and just be so embarrassed.
Disgusted. I was thinking about this the other day. There is nothing, not a single stitch to be found that he has not failed at. Nothing.
Right.
Nothing. I can't think of a single thing this guy's put his fingers on that it is not in flames. Nothing.
He's just a community organizer. I mean, by that design, those jobs are meant to agitate, irritate people. That's all they do.
Yeah. That's all he's done. It confuses people because his speeches don't indicate that. But if you actually look at the results.
Do you think he's going to face any kind of backlash for the idiocy he said at the prayer breakfast? I mean, I wonder what.
No, I don't. No, I don't know. The consequences for that will completely be in the hands of the media. Now, if the media decided to hold him accountable, he'd be really in trouble because I think the American people would be offended. But 60 to 70% of them never even heard it. 60% of this country, maybe 70%. I think 70% is actually reasonable. That might be a little exaggerated. That has no idea he said that. That the president goes to a prayer breakfast a room full of his countrymen, openly insults them. Meanwhile, and praise be to Allah, is burning human beings alive. And this dude's sitting around scribbling down on the teleprompter that he has a real problem with the crusade.
You Christians did this too.
No, you gotta get off your high horse. We gotta get off our high horse. Before we get all full of ourselves.
If it's not Islam that this is, why make the comparison to another religion?
I put myself in the mind of some of these guys. These guys that are sitting in a coffee house in like Portland and feeling like super better about themselves than everybody else. What they're thinking to themselves, I really believe it. They're thinking to themselves, well, this is a really great leader. So I got a bunch of lefties that listen to the show religiously, and every single show they hit me with a trite MSNBC talking point you've ever heard in your life. But anyway, they'll say something like this. Well, you're missing the point, Brock, because this is leadership from the president, and why this is good for him to do is because you see there's all this Islamophobia going on. So the fear is that us Christians, me and you, we're going to run around beating on Muslims or burning mosques or whatever because this is just who we are, obviously. And Obama, in his leadership, is trying to put a little lid on that and really get that under control. And see, that's why he's a leader for saying this. Here's the problem with that. There is no Islamophobia. Some of this stuff has happened in Europe from time to time. But nobody's running around burning mosques. This isn't actually happening. This is just something that they fear happening in, like, academia. But I know these guys. I know the way they think. I know that's what they're thinking about this. And I know that's what the president's thinking. He's thinking, I got to say this because these Americans, man, they're going to start abusing Muslims. I'm telling you, man, that's the way these guys think. That's what's going through his head. That's why he said that. he thinks we're going to all pop off. But we never do.
It's just appeasement, a pure appeasement. That's dangerous. It's so obvious that they want to project. I mean, they know that this is Islam, a problem with Islam, but they feel so much better about themselves when they say, well, I'm going to take the high road and not judge these people or not label them. But yet you have to.
I don't understand how that's the high road, but you are right. That's what they're thinking.
Yeah, that's what they think. I'm sure that's what they think. Well, I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to think these are bad people.
There's also a problem with moral equivalence and also just they don't believe in right and wrong. You know, I would say that there are absolute truths and that some things are black and some things are white, some things are good and some things are bad. I don't know that the average leftist, specifically a secularist, would even say that. I don't think that aligns with their worldview. I think it's like they're thinking, well, it's all perspective. Right. You know, you say it's evil, but it's really not evil. Like, I think that might sound crazy to the average person still, but I think that's where moral relativism, I think that's embedded in that worldview. I really think so. Because I'm kind of fearful that, you know, we finally get this fool out of office. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, how do we sit on $19 trillion forever in debt and not have consequences, right? How do we have massive spending and not have consequences? How do we have a Middle East that's completely been unhinged? The monsters are all let out of the cages, running around all over the place. And eventually, you know, the media is not going to be in favor of a Republican. So everything that they've been covering up and throwing dirt on so it doesn't stink, as soon as the GOP takes power, man, all that stuff, it'll be front page. And the average person that doesn't pay attention to politics is going to be like, man, stuff's really popping off since it's Republican. I think, you see where I'm going with this?
I think on one hand you were saying perhaps we're so bad that there's no hope of recovering, and when I think in the next 8 years, even the low information voter would kind of wake up and say, wow, I don't have freedom of speech anymore. Even the millennials will see the country is not a great awakening, I think. And you think that the Democrats should be in power when that happens?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're going the other, that's actually really interesting. You're going the other way. You're saying it's possible all these clowns wake up, you know?
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to go the bad way. It could go the positive way. You might be right, but let me tell you this, man. The left has this way of dodging the bullet. Like, I'll give you an example. You see all this stuff popping off with the vaccines recently?
Yeah, I've been seeing some of that.
So now there's a lot of outbreaks of measles, smallpox. That anti-vaccine movement, that was all liberals. That was all Democrats. And yet somehow when the consequences came, they were able to move out of the way and just say, we had a shift of opinion here. I try to teach people that's the MO. Because think about it, during slavery, right, all those Jim Crow laws, the slavery, the lynching, the KKK, those were all Democrats. The people who didn't sign the civil rights laws, all Democrats. That's Al Gore's father, that's Democrats across the board. But here we jump ahead all these years later, and somehow the Democrats become the party of the black man. It's amazing. Now, MLK was a Republican. But these guys just shaped the story as they want it to be. I said this on the podcast. I really believe this story. I think, all the global warming nonsense you're hearing now? Right. I think when economic fallout happens and when the refute finally is so loud scientifically that they can't lie anymore, they'll just pretend like that never happened.
You think they'll try to say it was the Republicans doing it?
I really do, man. And why not? It always works.
Yeah, the Republicans were pushing global warming. We never said anything about global warming.
I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you. This is what they do. It's remarkable what they're able to do. If you have the media, you can do anything. You're like bulletproof.
I couldn't believe what you'd said on that podcast about what they were doing in college universities, and that's unbelievable.
Isn't it?
Sex acts on stage, and then they wonder why there's a rape culture.
I mean, they don't connect the dots, man.
Not to mention all these kids have, iPhones in their pockets, which, what that does to a pubescent kid? We're in a culture of porn, a culture of just pure sex and porn. Gay
right.
Porn. Anything that has to do with sex is popular.
And by the way, it's these same professors that glorify that. So it's almost remarkable because these professors glorify this like unlimited, unchained, full throttle sex nonstop, 24 hours a day, perversion. Then they turn around and say, "Whoa, what's going on here? There's this rape culture going on. Or there's sexually, what? How can they possibly be that clueless?"
It goes back to them not calling out what's wrong. Obviously, porn's terrible, but I'm not going to judge you for being obsessed with porn and watching sex acts at our college. I'm not going to judge you for that.
They want to be pro-woman, but they want to be pro-porn. Like